Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this week's coaching session. And today we've got a guest, a lady by the name of Diane Prince. I'm going to give you a brief overview of who Diane is, but Diane, I want you to sort of share a bit more. So, Diane is an experienced recruiter based in the States. She sold her business for, was it 28 million US? Yeah, kind of worth listening to, don't you think? But over to you, Ty. Yeah, just give us a brief background of who you are, what you've done. As usual, Diane will be coming around and asking you questions, so be prepared for that as well. Thank you very much for joining us today, Diane. Over to you.
Okay, hey, thanks so much, Terry. Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Glad to see so many people. So I'm Diane. And I live in Arizona. I was in Southern California for about 30 years and just moved to Arizona. It's very hot, so I have a fan. And can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, perfect. So little known fact, my first experience in recruiting was in London. I think I may have told Terry this. I used to, when I was young, I'm still very adventurous, but they used to give student work permits. So I'd get work permits and I worked in London, I worked in Paris. And I showed up in London with like $200 in my pocket, no job, no place to live. And I ended up like 3 days later, pouring beer at the Glassblower pub in Piccadilly Circus. I was not even drinking age in the US, so I had no idea what I was doing. When I drafted one pint, and somebody said, "How fast do you type?" And so then I went on to Tempicide, but I learned about temping, and it was so wonderful. But my first assignment, I overheard the office manager tell someone else, "Remind me never to hire a temp again." So that was my first experience. So sorry that I ruined that client for everyone in England, but anyway, so a few years later, I did start a staffing agency, and the reason that I did, and feel free to ask questions. I will be calling on you. I'm learning from the best, learning from Terry on that. So, but yeah, so a few years later, I found myself really not having much business experience. Still, I'd been teaching French, and also temping through college and grad school, and so my entrance into recruiting started with the idea of my husband and I. We were in our 20s, and we wanted to start a business that we could sell. So that was our goal. We did not start with recruiting in mind. We started with the vision in mind and what we wanted to accomplish from that. And so from there, we started brainstorming really what kind of businesses could we start? Like, what could we start and that we could actually build up an asset and something that was valuable that we could sell and retire in our 30s, which was our goal. And from that, we arrived. From that, we arrived on staffing. And when I say staffing, I know there's different terminology, and I don't mean any kind of like different, like there's contracting, there's basically like anything from light industrial to chief technical officer. So I know sometimes it's called interim, it's called contracting, runners. There's a lot of different names for it, but that's how I got into the business, is because I identified something that was going to build what we wanted to accomplish. Okay. So
just on that, just before we go on, just to remind everybody, if anybody's got any questions, please type one in the box, and we'll let Diane know. If you've got any questions about anything, just type one in the box. And as I said before, we'll be coming to you for any questions anyway. But yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to let the guys know they can ask you questions as you go along.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question. So, how many of you, who here does contingent placements? Nobody. Who does? Was that Vincent?
I tell you what, if you do contingency, put a C in the chat box.
Okay.
C for contingent, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so Vincent, a lot of you. Okay, Laura, Haley, and Isaac, and James, who does retained search?
Put an R in the chat box if you retained.
Financially committed or retained search. Okay, Cool. And some of you maybe do both. And who does contracting? Put it, did we,
T.
oh, we were already.
Put a T in a if you do contracting or temp.
T for contracting. Yeah. T for temping. Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
CRT. I'm confused now, Vincent. What's CRT? Contingent retained.
It's a little bit of everything, Jerry.
Right.
Okay, cool. Well, what I learned now that I'm in the, yeah, definitely interrupt with any questions, put questions in the chat. So what I learned now that I'm in the coaching and consulting world in recruiting, and what I learned that I found fascinating. Oh, also, we'll share too. So most of my experience was in contracting and temp and building, and the company that Terry mentioned, I built in 6 years. We built a business that we sold for $28 million to a public company, and reached our goal. I had another agency that I sold to the former chairman of Adecco, and that was in a private sale. That was we were at about $35 million in revenue there. And so fast forward, I worked at a permanent placement agency in 2019, 2020, and they had it was very interesting because they started the same year that I originally started my business, and which had been 20 years prior. And so I had sold that business. I had a few exits, and they were still at their maximum billing was $5 million. And they were really kind of living placement to placement, even though, and they had a team, they had built a team, but everybody really on the team was going from placement to placement, right? It was, and then I had the chance too to do permanent placement, and I thought it was kind of crazy. I mean, it was fun, and but that experience of waiting and all of the things that have to happen for a placement to be made was really struck me, and they had hired me to help them to build out their contracting division. Now what I do is I coach recruiting agency owners to basically build a business around their recruiting. So looking at how to really build a business around your vision. So whether your vision is to run a business that you keep for a long time, maybe maybe you have a succession plan, maybe there's someone in your family that you want to give it to, maybe you do want to sell and exit. So that's my goal, is to help people to understand the power of recurring revenue and having consistent cash flow. Because I've realized that in talking to recruiting agency owners, and I have a lot of one-on-one calls with different agency owners, and hearing like even public speakers, and they'll say to me, and like kind of behind closed doors, they'll tell me about their cash flow struggles. They'll tell me, I don't really, like, I've been doing this. One person I work with, he's been doing this since 1987 and doesn't really have anything to show for it. I mean, besides making placements, and then it's still every single month starting from scratch. So, and I've learned that only 27% of recruiting agencies have predictable monthly recurring revenue. Okay. So, and it's very common. And most agency owners are living from search to search. Okay. So when you're having recurring revenue, the focus shifts from searching fees to frequent payouts. I've noticed a lot of agency owners, sometimes they don't pay themselves. They don't have the cash flow. They don't have the money to do that. I talk to people who say, I'd love to hire a coach. I'd love to do this, but I have to wait. Like, I have to wait until this one placement hits. So does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. I'm curious, from people who have done contract. Okay, I'm going to call on Vincent because I know you do all three. What would you say, how is your business diversified between your contingent, retained, and temp?
So I'm also with a background in doing the temporary recruitment for freelancers and continue. What is it called? The T, I think. Anyway, I only started with doing retainers about a year and a half ago when I started also with the program with Terry, and just getting into that was a had to completely change my business, and I didn't want to let go of all the other things that I was doing, so I kept some of them going. But last year I didn't focus on any new deals for that. Now, for this year, I also said that I had the R, which is the no, that's retained. Sorry, the contingency. So retained is my main focus. I think 80% of it, of the business. I do some contingency where I see that is my ideal client where I want to get in. And I have, for example, already a candidate because it's in a very similar thing to what I'm doing now. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing. 20%.
Okay, and then you're also doing temp?
Yes, but
Okay.
temp is only with the clients that I already work for, and yeah, it's just the continued income.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. And what about and Perry? Tell us about your temp business.
Yeah, so for ourselves, it's more kind of just day rate contractors or fixed term contracts. So we don't payroll ourselves. We obviously will just charge an introduction for day rate contractors or fixed term.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. And is that all do you do other things? Do you do also contingent?
Yeah, we also do retained as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
just temp side is just an additional resource.
Okay. So I'm gonna try to convince you guys, or I'm gonna share with you some of the details and facts on and you can use like anything that all the things that Terry teaches you in selling and applying it also to temp, because that's where you do have the consistent recurring revenue. And I'm going to do some math and show you the numbers, but so that your focus really can shift, so that, you know, like if you think about it, so how many of you have ever stressed about getting a new client? Yeah. So what the difference is, okay, so what you want to do and what you can do is switch from the focus of, because it's a big hustle, right? That's why, you know, you're learning how to sell and you're learning how to do biz dev, and you're good at what you do, but there's a continuous hustle to get new clients. Okay. So when you do, the difference is when you're doing that, or versus when you're doing contracting, is you have more consistency, and that in the clients where your focus shifts from having to hustle to get every new client to maintaining. You know, we all know it's easier to maintain a client than to get a new client. So think about the power of doing the things that you're doing and the things that you're learning in the biz dev, to combine that with bringing in, and why wouldn't you combine that with recurring revenue, so that you know that the clients that you're bringing in with the things that you're already doing are going to provide you with the cash flow and the stability that you need. So if you think about it, like what bills could you pay? And we can do some math. I'm going to see if I can share my iPad screen here. And I'm going to call on some of you too. Let's see. I'm going to okay, let's see if this is going to work. Okay, cool. You can see my iPad, right? Okay, yeah. So all right, and let me just shift my view here so I can see everybody. Okay, so Laura, I'm going to call on you. What kind of people do you place? What kind of candidates?
Executives in tech.
In tech, okay. And do you do what's your business model? Is it contingent or
No contingency, retained or exclusive. I mean, I'm pretty much a solopreneur, so sometimes I do project-based, but no contingency, no temps.
No temps. Okay. What is a typical salary of a person that you place?
175 to and above.
Okay, that's like 175K. That's
Yeah.
in the annual salary. Okay. Okay. So and what would that be, like an engineering manager or?
No, it could be an architect in a particular language and software.
Okay. Okay.
It's mostly
So
leadership role, so that wouldn't work for temp.
why do you think that?
Because that's just from my experience, it's far in between that if I'm looking for a VP in engineering to run a team, that they would hire a temp to do that job.
Okay. Okay. A lot of people think that, and I'll share one example. When I mentioned I was working at the tech recruiting agency in LA, and because there's common, we can talk about like common myths and common things that people think about temps. I ended up getting a $3 million contract that was a temp contract. And the reason we got it is because we had one of our candidates we had been submitting one of our candidates, and he accepted another role with a different company. It was a temp assignment. It was actually a 2-year contract, and they were building out, it's a company that was building their security guard company, and they were building out a new software, their internal software, to manage the security guards, to manage, people's time and everything. Okay, so he actually accepted that contract role instead of our role, and they were and he was the engineering manager there. Okay, and even if it's not okay, so then in that realm too, there's a lot of people that work under those people. So I'm just going to show you the math, and then see. Okay, so if it's 175,000, okay, and so that's, if you divide that.
We can't see any drawing, by the way.
I'm sorry. That's because I'm using my ISO calculator. Okay, so that's 8750. Okay, so that would be, so can you
Sorry, Dan, I don't understand. Where did you get the 8750 from? I didn't quite understand.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so if it's 175K, okay. So to figure hourly from that, you divide by 2,000.
Oh, number of hours in the year. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's minus 2 weeks. I'm in the US, so we hardly get any vacation. So that's minus like PTO. So it's typically minus 2 weeks. So 175K divided by 2,000. What did I say it was? 8750. I'm just gonna do the math over here. Okay, so 8750. Okay, and these are, typical, and in the US, and by the way, there's so much opportunity in the US. Did you guys know, like, the statistics of, I don't remember the exact statistic, but there's like, I think there's like, it's like there's crazy amount, maybe you know, Terry, like there's a crazy amount more of recruitment agencies in the UK than the US, but the market in the US is like 10 times more. It's insane. Like there's so much opportunity here. Okay, so, and the reason I say that is because there's ways to, I also get a lot of requests, and I help people from the UK who want to build out, make placements in the US, and that can be done. And it's not as complicated as most people think. Okay, so I'll just do the math, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see, because I can't see the, I can see the chat too. So, okay. So if it's 87, say the hourly rate's 8750. Okay. And a typical markup for tech contracts, and I do contracting too. I do have a little contracting business on the side, and our rates are typically the pay rates are typically about $100 an hour, the pay rate. Okay. So say it's 8750, and a typical markup would be about, it can be anywhere between 40 to 70% for tech. So let's say we're doing 60%. Okay. So that means Okay, I'm gonna do this on my other calculator. So 8750 times 60%. So that's 140. Okay, so that would be the bill rate. Okay. And then if you're doing, so typically, and I'm not going to go into these details because like that's a whole later thing. But typically your cost would be, and if this is like, if you're doing it in the US and you're doing everything like your employee costs, which are pretty expensive, your costs are typically about 20%. And that's also getting your payroll funded, which is also pretty easy to do. So then your cost would be, okay, so times, it would be about 20%. So that is, so your cost would be 105, okay? So what's 140 minus 105?
35.
35. Okay, so that's 35, say 35, I'll say 35 pounds, $35 an hour. Okay, so what could you do? So if you do the math, okay, so 35, and what's 35 times 2,000? Sean.
70,000.
What is it?
70,000.
70,000. Okay. So what would you do? So what could you do with an extra 70,000 pounds per year? Okay. Drew has a question. I'm ready.
Yeah, just a quick one. Is there like any industries or job titles where contracting doesn't work, or is it a case of you can make it work in any sector?
So I have clients who, so when I started my business, and I love that question because niche is so important. So when I started, I did a very like specialized niche, and it's a role that you need when you buy real estate in the United States. But I work with people who do everything from plumbers to chief technical officers, engineering managers, to healthcare, surgical directors. So it really, I mean, it's in all different industries use contract labor.
Okay, and then typically, do clients come to you wanting, to hire on a contract basis, or is it a case of they come to you maybe wanting perm, but you're selling them on the idea of contract? Is there any patterns there?
Yeah, I love that question, because that's a place where, so some typical things that I see where people get stuck. And one is how to sell. And I noticed this really when I was at when it's called Higher Cloud, that agency in LA. When I was teaching them how to do contracting, one thing I learned is how stuck people kind of got just because they didn't really understand how to sell it. So what I recommend people do, if they're even curious, and if you even think like, okay, if I had, and say it's, 50,000 pounds or whatever it is, if you look at like just what one contractor can do for you and what bills that could pay for you, maybe it's your rent, maybe it's your own salary, whatever it is, maybe it's your applicant tracking system, whatever that can do for you. And then, so the first step is really just asking your client. So I don't really see it as a pitch, because you want to know, right? Like you want to know what kind of client share you have with your clients. Okay. Because what could be happening is you could be doing executive search, and that's all they see you as. That's just what they think you do, right? They're like, okay, Don Don is our guy for executive search. That's what we call on him for. But they don't know that you have that capability, and maybe you don't have it yet, but guess what? It's not that difficult to set up. So I tell people, find out, you should be having the conversations with your clients anyway, and understanding what all of their search spend is. Okay, because you could be walking away from literally millions of dollars or millions of pounds, like just by not even knowing, and by them kind of siloing you into this space. So wouldn't you even want to know? And even just having that question and asking them, hey, by the way, what is like, you do a scorecard with your clients and find out what are their other needs? Where could you use, do you use contractors? First of all, because your mind might be blown. I mean, you might all of a sudden realize that they have this like whole other area where they're spending millions of pounds on contractors, and you just don't know.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, sorry, Drew, you want
Oh, just after Vincent, Emily's got a question. Just put one in the chat box.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So to understand correctly what contractors are, do you take them, you hire them as a freelancer, or you hire them, you get them on your payroll?
So typically you get them on your payroll. So there's sometimes you can do, and I mean, there's different laws in different countries, but typically you get them on your payroll, and there's ways to do that. There's companies that help you to do that. So I partner with different companies that become the employer. So it's a lot easier. Like when I did it, it was very complicated because I didn't know these things, but you can put them on your payroll, or you actually put them on, you partner with a company that puts them on their payroll, and they will even fund that payroll.
So even there's no laws, like if you have them in your payroll for about a year or so, or after 2 contract extensions, that you have to take them on permanent contract, and then you cannot let them go, because at least in Netherlands, it's really risky, because if you cannot just let them go, and if you don't have a job for them, you have to pay them anyway. If they get sick, you still have to pay them onwards, and only you can get insured for that as well. But it's not as easy to say, okay, 175K, and then the markup is 1.6. If you can get them off with clients all the time, yes, then it is. At least in Netherlands, I don't know if that's the difference in UK or US.
Yeah, it's well, and I don't know the laws in the Netherlands, but even in the States, each state has different laws. So it is really important to understand what the laws are in your country, and in your, if there's different, I don't know, like here it's like not just federal, but there's different states all have different laws. But that's why I recommend using, it's called an employer of record. And when you use, even like calling them and asking them, and I have, if you message me, like I have, make sure you link in with me. Let me put my LinkedIn. I know, I think Terry put it in at the beginning, but I'll put it in, let me put it in again. So if you just link in with me, then I can introduce you to an employer of record. And there's ones that do payroll internationally, and they'll be able to help you understand what all the laws are.
I'll put your link in. You carry on, Diane. I'll put your link in for you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Emily had a question?
This is a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for talking to us all. I kind of do a little bit of this already, because I act as an employer of record. I recruit South Africans that work in the UK, and most of our clients are in the UK. But I would be really keen to hit the US big time, because I really loved your tip about how the Americas are a big land of opportunity. What's the best way of approaching new clients in America?
Yeah, so that's like, we could have a whole other topic about it, which I do, by the way. I happen to have resources on that. So yeah, so I do help people with that. And I think that, yeah, I mean, it's so hot right now. And it's, again, it's not as complicated. There's a few things that you have to put in place. And there's partners that I recommend working with. And with the competitiveness in other countries that we don't have here, you guys are so, from like stereotypical, but like I'm stereotyping, but you guys are so good at sales, and we're not as good, and we have all this opportunity. So yeah, definitely, please, get in touch with me, and I can help you with that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I just want to add, it's worth, to share a few things with you. Often we talk to recruiters and they say, yeah, but my market don't do retain, or they don't do exclusive, or they won't pay those fees. And the question I always ask is, have you asked your clients that question? And 99.9% of the time they haven't. So if anybody here's thinking, oh, but I'm not sure if my market do temps, what I would say to you is just ask the question. Simply ask the question. And I know guys at a real senior level, senior HR guys, IT guys, senior sales guy, and they get these contracts. And by the way, they tend to be quite long as well, 2-3 year contracts, because there's a lot of benefits for the organization to bring in a contractor as well. Remember, you can get anybody to do anything if there's a benefit to them. So if the client can see the benefit in them having the contractor, they're going to have that conversation with you as well. And many years ago, and Drew, you'll remember his name, but one of the things that they would do, they would talk about doing perm roles, but they would suggest finding a contractor until they filled the role on the permanent basis. You see the advantage of that because they're getting paid twice. They're getting paid for filling the contract role, but they then also fill in the perm role as well. They also used it to block their competitors because they weren't asking for an exclusive. So they say, look, we'll find a temp for you. In the meantime, we're going to find a perm for you as well. But I think the key thing is here, think about the benefits to the client of getting a contractor and ask the question, because you don't know until you ask the question. So I just wanted to share that. When it comes to James and then you, Drew.
Laura's got a question.
Oh, sorry, Laura. Sorry, Laura. I didn't see you. Laura, you're first. Your question was in first, and then James Brown. Apologies.
I just have a quick question, Diane. What about liability? I mean, I know that in different states, and for the most part, all my clients are in California, but what about the liability?
Well, that's where typically when you, so when I did it, I had all the liability because I did it kind of complicated, but employers of record generally take on most of the liability.
But the liability for me placing contractors like workman's comp or insurance or unemployment, all of that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know I'm familiar enough, but not, it's just something that comes to mind, the liability of having those people on your payroll, even if you're payrolling through another company. I mean, I don't know what that would be.
They generally handle all of that liability, and I can introduce you if you even just like talking to a couple of them and getting kind of understanding. And I like, this is what I do all the time. Like I talk to them and I vet different partners and things like that, but they can explain that to you. But yeah, they basically, because they are the employer, they handle workers' comp and all of that.
So it would affect them if anything happens. It wouldn't affect us.
Correct.
Okay.
I still recommend everybody has a lawyer, right? Like everybody has to, like to understand your own CPA and lawyer. But typically when you work with an employer of record, they have an umbrella, they handle all of the workers' comp, they register in each state. Even like I was sued by the state of Pennsylvania because I didn't realize that they had sales tax. So usually when you're working with an employer of record, they also do the invoicing and they do the collections as well. And they handle that and they understand what the state taxes are and sales tax.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Your question?
Yeah, hi, thanks. And I'm actually in the healthcare recruiting market. I do mostly physician recruiting and nurses. And I wanted to do the temp, but I think you had what you had talked about, the certain fees you need to know in order to do the markup. And I don't know exactly what that is because I haven't done that. I was trying to do it before and they said for a doctor's malpractice insurance, it's really high. One company was telling me it's not really worth it to do it for physicians, but then someone else told me you can, but there's another way around it. And I heard you talking about this umbrella company or what is it, employer of record. And I would like to be introduced to them because I had several opportunities before to do that, but I let it go just because I didn't know exactly how to, fund this payroll because they make a lot of money, right? These physicians and nurses. And I just wanted to see how to get introduced into that world and how I can start that. And then, we're doing retained and contingency. So would it be possible to be exclusive with someone and do a retained on a temp contract?
Yeah. I mean, anything's possible, right? I mean, it's just having the conversations. And if you message me, I can introduce you because I would say like get the facts, right? Just understand, because that's typically what I find is preventing people from doing this is because they just don't know. So I say just get the facts at least, and then you can make the decision and learn what it would be like if you place doctors or if you place people definitely place nurses and doctors. And one of my clients does surgical directors and, there's is interim. So just, yeah, but I'm happy to, and different employers of records do different things in different countries. So like some won't touch certain roles and some do, but they can give you all the information. So then you have the facts. And then when you say like they make a lot of money or whatever, that's also subjective, because, you know, like we can like have this mindset, like, oh, they're, you know, high level, whatever, but you'd be surprised what companies will pay for that, because they know, you know, I mean, that's what they do.
Because one of the things they also do, or what they were telling me in order to take that contract on, was I had to pay for their housing and their flights too, for they call locum tenens, you know,
Yeah.
them to work maybe a 13-week shift. And I was like, how am I going to fund hotels and flights and all of that? That's a lot. So
Well, those are things that you could negotiate. I mean, but again, like find out the facts. But those are things, and Vincent asked the question if you can be paid up front. So like for certain things like that, I mean, and yes, like I have one client that gets paid up front, so you can negotiate that. It's unusual, like to get paid for your payroll up front, but things like that, like locum, and I mean, the companies providing the work for, they know that, so it has to be baked in your billing, and you have to be paid, and you know, yeah, I mean, you have to be paid for those things up front.
is that something I negotiate with the client itself, or would it be this employer of record that I would be able to negotiate that with? So like, let's say the client comes to me and they're like, we need you to pay for their hotel and their flights, and of course all the insurance that goes on top of it. Can I speak to this employer of record and say, would you fund not only their payroll, but would you be able to fund this flights and hotels and such as well?
Yeah, I don't think they would do that. I think that would be a negotiation with the client.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but contact me and I can introduce you.
Sure. Will do. Thank you.
Couple of things. I want to go around the room. I want to go to a few people and just get other people's thoughts, feedback, and observations. I've got a question for you, but what I'm going to do, Diane, I'm going to ask you to come back, because I'm intrigued. Because I didn't know that you got your business from zero to and then sold it in 6 years for 28 million. And I'm surprised nobody's asked you that. And I really want to know the story there, but we haven't got enough time now. So just to let you know, I do want to know that story, and I'm sure a lot of other people here want to know how you got from zero to 28 million in 6 years. That's amazing. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go around the room. I'll just go to a few people. Don, can I come to you? Just like to get your thoughts, feedback, and observations. James Smith, I'd like to get your thoughts, feedback, and observations as well. And Sean Bartley. So Don, first of all, please.
Yeah, no, I thank Diana for taking time to, basically talk with us about this. So I got my start personally in contract consulting, recruiting engineers for the likes of Nortel Networks, Ericsson, and other major telecoms providers many blue moons ago. And to me, it's a very interesting business model. I guess, and we don't have to necessarily answer these today, but a number of I guess what I'm going to call the fairly senior types, like maybe Laura's engineering manager, director, whatever, it kind of dawns on me that some of the people that I was dealing with always charge what I'm going to call a bit of a risk premium, in that the computation wasn't necessarily 175,000 divided by 2,000. Because the apples to apples comparison, if that person were in a full-time equivalent position, would also afford them the benefits of, say, Nortel Networks or Ericsson in this example. And it affords them things like inducement grants, stock options, other things that they would not be entitled to in an independent contracting type capability. So I would sometimes get challenged on the math, the 2 divided by 2,000 hours, because it's not really an apples to apples comparison. The other thing that I just wanted to point out, and I think people need to look into, and Diane, you probably know this stuff well. I haven't looked into this in years, but just pulled this up, and the umbrella companies may take care of this. But there are Department of Labor and Internal Revenue Service rules that determine whether you're an independent contractor or a full-time employee. And I know they've gotten stricter over the years, and this is for the US market. Okay. I don't know other markets, but someone could come back and say, gee, that person's really a full-time employee. And now you've got a different set of circumstances on your hand. All of this feeds into, I guess, the ultimate thought I have about this, which is as a solopreneur, I think it would just take a lot of time and focus on this as an independent business entity, while also recognizing that you could be giving up some things. I loved your quote earlier. Do you use contractors? Not something that I've asked my clients, and I probably will go and do that to at least find out, start to explore. But I do think it's almost like a separate business line in one sense, that that you've got to think deeply and put a lot of different moving parts into play.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. And
thanks, Don. Yeah, that's awesome. I want to say, so the independent contractor versus W-2, and whether or not you make, what I did, like they were all my contractors, and I had typically about 700 to 800 out at one time. They were all my W-2 employees, which looking back, I think that was crazy. I would have, if I did it again, I would use an employer of record, but I did, but they were all my W-2 employees. And the thing about that, just really briefly, is that the thing about contracting or temp is that you are literally doing something that your clients cannot do for themselves because of those laws, because of the independent contractor laws. And I know, James brought up like how the laws are in the UK about an independent contractor. So that's why because if you're like executive search, permanent placement, they can do that. They cannot have internal temps. They've tried that. There are giant crackdowns. They just literally cannot do that. So that's something that we can provide when we're doing contracting services. So that is another selling point. But yes, they do typically, the umbrella, or I don't know what umbrella is, but the corporate employers of record do take care of that, whether they're W-2 employees of them or of yourself. And I'm happy to, like, I talk about this all day long, and happy to feel free to link in with me and we can talk more about it.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Diane. I was going to go to James, but he's in a restaurant bar. I think it's a bar, actually. So I'm going to go to Sean next. Hi, Sean.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, buddy. Good, thank you.
Good. So my first introduction to staffing was on the temp to perm side. And in having my own business now, the past 2.5 years, it's strictly been perm. And I see the benefits 100% of being able to divvy up the time between both. But to your point, Don, right, I see it being some sort of a separate line item or some sort of a separate offshoot of the perm business versus it just all rolling into one. I'm certainly interested in the opportunity and the topic because, when times are right and when business is rolling, people want both. They want you to help on their perm, and they also have a lot of these manufacturing companies I'm working with. They've also got quite a bit of temp opportunities. They're just lower in terms of salary and scope of work than what I would typically go into. There's a lot of techs, a lot of, $18, $19, $20 an hour roles that I wouldn't even touch even if it was perm. So that's just a separate, just requires a delineation of thought, right? Just really splitting it into two. I've got lower level temp working business in the manufacturing side, and then I've got my perm stuff too. So it's worth the conversation for sure.
Yeah, and thanks, Sean. And if you look at it, like you have the contractors, and by the way, when I had my staffing businesses, our average pay rate was between we even had $7 an hour people, and so we were doing $1 million weekly billing. So if you can imagine, like our average was around $20 an hour. But if you look at that and you have the contractors out, and then that's kind of your base, and then the permanent placement, that's the icing on the cake, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Great comment.
Yeah, I think that worth considering. You can do interim or contract roles at any level. It could be entry level, or it could be at board level. Somebody that Drew and I know, he was an interim for the last probably 13, 14 years. He's been an interim HR director for some major organisations, including Levi Strauss and British Sugar. So some massive roles. So the reason I say that is that it's just worth opening your minds to the realms of possibility, the sort of temp roles or interim roles, contract roles, whatever you want to call them, that you could be looking at. But I go back to ask the question. If nothing else, just ask the question. Because here's the thing, if you don't, but somebody else does, they stand more of a chance of getting that business than you do, whatever happens. So yeah, I'm going to go very quickly to Rob Maguire. I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback, because I know you're working on an international level, Rob. I'm intrigued to your thoughts and feedback on what we've talked about here. Hi, Rob.
Hi there, everyone. Yeah, and I think it's great about the reoccurring of revenue. I can really resonate with that. To maintain those accounts, rather than just selling retainers every week and you get a lot of rejection. So for financial security, I really buy into the points you made, Diane, about the reoccurring revenue. I was gonna ask you, like, how many contractors did you have at one time? How long did it take you to? Did you say 700 to 800 at one time? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Do you mind me asking, how long did it take you to get it to that kind of volume?
That was what I mean, it was a whole, we just had the company for 6 years before we sold it. So pretty quickly we had, I mean, I think it took us about like about 3 years, we were at about 700 contractors out. Mhm.
Okay, no, that's great. It's great to have that scale, yeah, because I'm very new to contract recruitment, so I wouldn't know about what kind of numbers. Is there, like, I know it varies on the different hourly rates, but is there like a minimum that you would aim for? Do you have like goals after the first year to be at X amount of contractors, for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's all, and that's a whole other conversation, but I'm big on goal setting and then looking at like what actually you need to do to make that happen and backing it up into like the next 90 days. So that's things that we can do, but that would be an entire other conversation.
No, brilliant. No, well, thanks for that. Really appreciate it.
Just very quickly, Rob, because I know you work in Asia a lot. Do you hear of much demand for interim or contract certainly in the Asian market?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when I first started working in China 18 years ago, it's just unheard of. It just wasn't a mature enough economy at that time. Everyone was just going after quick fees via contingency and recruitment retainers. I think Hong Kong more so in areas like banking and IT sectors. There's a lot of demand for contract recruitment, but in those sort of economies that only were not long ago emerging, it wasn't really such a big thing at the time. It's more kind of sort of basic contingency needs. Some don't really even understand like the concept of a retainer. You have to really educate them on those sort of concepts. So not so much in my experience, to be honest, quite new to it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was thinking of is, because I know you do work in Vietnam, would it be the same? Would they be very similar to China in terms of the concept of contract?
I would say, I mean, Vietnam is basically China 30 years ago in many respects. So I would guess so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did hire my with a second company I had called Workway, and we got up to about 35 million in billing. And I hired as my COO was he was heading up Kelly Southeast Asia. So he was, I mean, and that was in 2010. So I mean, there was a pretty big contracting market back then.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, it's just, I think the point you made at the beginning about the recurring income, for anybody in the perm side, just open your office door on the first of the month and knowing that you've got XYZ coming into your bank account. If you're a perm recruiter, it's a game changer. But we're going to wrap up now. If you've got any questions, very quickly, type one in the box. But we are going to look to wrap up now. As I said, Diane, I'd love to have you back if that's okay with you. I'd just like to hear more about the journey itself, and how you got from where you were to where you are now. Great session. Thanks for joining us today. Until next time, folks, take care, take action, be relentless.